I'm Emily. I'm 31. And until that night, I still clung to the illusion that I mattered equally in this family. I was wrong. 1 week before my grandmother's will was to be read, my estranged father invited me to an upscale restaurant in Milwaukee. I should have known then. He only called when something was brewing. I never imagined they'd try to give away everything she left me to my brother. The valet took my car with a crisp nod, the kind they reserve for confident professionals who dress just right. I'd chosen navy, a fitted blazer, dark jeans, heels that clicked just enough to remind me I could walk into any room and be taken seriously. That included the velvet-draped foyer of La Cantarella, Milwaukee's go-to for families who wanted to appear more intact than they really were. I saw them already seated, my parents, Lyle and Deirdre, and my younger brother Nathan, ever casual in a flannel shirt that somehow cost more than my rent in grad school. Dad lifted his glass before I even reached the table, like we were toasting something already. That should have been my second clue. "Emily," Mom said, her smile a little too wide, too rehearsed. "So glad you could join us." Like I'd had a choice. I sat down, smoothing the napkin over my lap. "What's the occasion?" Dad chuckled. "Can't we just have dinner with our daughter?" My stomach tightened. My parents hadn't asked me to dinner in over 2 years, at least not one where Nathan wasn't the centerpiece. He was sipping a Negroni, completely at ease. The waitress brought wine. Pinot Noir, my favorite, another red flag. The small talk dragged. Work, weather, Nathan's latest project, which sounded suspiciously like freelancing without deadlines. Then Mom folded her hands on the white tablecloth. "Your grandmother's will is being read next week," she said lightly, as if commenting on the soup of the day. "I know," I replied. "I'm meeting with the lawyer on Thursday." There was a pause. Dad cleared his throat. "We've been thinking, Emily, about what's best for everyone. Here it comes. You've done so well for yourself," Mom added. "Career, your own place. Grandma was proud, obviously, but Nathan, he's at a different place in life. He could really use the support." I blinked. "What support?" Mom exchanged a look with Dad. "We want you to consider transferring the estate to Nathan," Dad said. I almost laughed, thinking it had to be a joke. "Wait, what?" "The house, the stocks, the accounts," Mom continued. "He's been struggling. It's what Grandma would have wanted." Something inside me snapped taut. "You mean the same Grandma who taught me to budget when I was 10, who sent me birthday cards with handwritten notes while you two forgot half the time?" Dad stiffened. "Don't be dramatic." "No," I said, my voice rising. "Be honest, you've always bobbied Nathan, and now you're trying to rewrite Grandma's wishes before the will is even opened." Nathan finally spoke. "I didn't ask them to do this, Em, but they're right. I'm drowning here. You wouldn't even notice the difference." "You're right," I said, heart pounding. "I wouldn't notice because I earned what I have. No one handed it to me. I don't owe you my inheritance." Mom's smile was gone now. "Emily, family supports family." "No, family doesn't manipulate. This is theft, dressed in civility." I stood, grabbed my coat. The restaurant blurred around me, glass clinking, soft jazz, the polished illusion of warmth. "I'll see you at the will reading," I said, looking straight at Dad. "And next time you want to ambush me over wine, don't pretend it's about family." And I walked out, heels striking the marble like a gavel. The slam of my apartment door echoed louder than I expected. Maybe because everything else felt so quiet, like the entire world had paused, waiting for me to make sense of what just happened. I dropped my keys into the ceramic dish Grandma had given me years ago, back when she was still hosting Christmas dinners and pulling me aside to tell me how proud she was. I didn't even take off my coat. I just stood in the middle of my cozy loft, Milwaukee lights blinking through the frosted windows, and felt hollow. It was supposed to be a dinner. A weird one, sure, but nothing I hadn't handled before. But they blindsided me, like always. I was supposed to smile, sip wine, and nod while they handed everything I'd ever hoped for to the one person who'd never had to earn a thing in his life. Nathan, my younger brother, the golden boy of mediocrity. The one who crashed his car during finals week and got a new one before I could say consequences. The one who once stole my scholarship check to buy cryptocurrency, and Mom made me apologize for causing tension. I sank into the couch without turning on the lights. I didn't need them. My memories lit up the room. 5th grade, my birthday fell on a Saturday. I waited all morning for my parents to remember. At 2 p.m., Mom walked in with a soccer bag and said, "We need to take Nathan to practice. Maybe we can celebrate tomorrow." High school, straight A's again. I hung the honor roll certificate on the fridge. Nathan got a C+ in science and got balloons. He's trying, Dad said. College, I worked 2 jobs, budgeted every penny. Nathan failed out of his first program and moved back home. They called it a gap year. I let out a bitter laugh. It wasn't favoritism, it was a blueprint. One I'd spent my whole life trying to unsee. I reached for my phone out of habit, but there were no new texts, no apologies, no "are you okay?" Not even from Nathan, who could have sent a single line. I didn't know they'd say that. But of course he didn't. He was probably too busy celebrating the idea of inheriting a free house. The couch creaked as I shifted, unzipping my coat and letting it fall beside me. My chest ached, not from the argument, but from the deeper hurt, the kind that stretches back decades and hides beneath polite family dinners and tight smiles. I had always been the responsible one, the dependable daughter, the peacemaker, the one who never caused scenes. But tonight, I had caused a scene. I walked out, loud and angry, and left my parents staring at an empty chair and an untouched glass of wine. And you know what? I was proud of that. Because somewhere between my father's smug confidence and my mother's guilt-laced manipulation, I finally realized they were never going to see me unless I stopped making it easy for them to ignore me. I stood up and crossed to the bookshelf, running my fingers along the spines until I found it, Grandma's journal. She'd given it to me the day I moved into this loft. "I started this when I was your age," she'd said, eyes twinkling. "Maybe it's your turn now." I opened it gently, flipping past her delicate cursive until I found the blank pages at the back. I didn't know what I was writing at first. Just words, feelings, memories. But soon it turned into something else, a kind of quiet manifesto. I will not hand over my future out of obligation. I will not sacrifice fairness to preserve comfort. I will not play the quiet daughter anymore. If this makes me difficult, so be it. Tears spilled before I realized I was crying, not from sadness, from release. They could call me dramatic, selfish, cold, but I knew the truth now. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about a lifetime of being asked to shrink so my brother could shine. No more. The wind picked up outside, brushing sleet against the windows. I watched the city shimmer beneath a blanket of early winter, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. I felt like someone on the edge of something terrifying and necessary. And next Thursday, when that will was read, I'd be ready. Thursday came with the kind of sharp, cloudless cold that bites through wool and confidence. Downtown Milwaukee looked crisp, orderly, nothing like the storm swirling in my stomach. The law office was nestled in a historic building with brass plaques and old-world charm. Grandma would have liked it. She had a thing for details. Mahogany trim, tea instead of coffee, handwritten cards instead of texts. She also had a thing for fairness, something my family had long since forgotten. I stepped into the paneled office, greeted by warm lighting and the faint scent of old books and leather. The receptionist smiled. "You must be Emily Rowan." I nodded, gripping the strap of my handbag a little tighter. "She's expecting you," she said, gesturing toward a closed door. Inside sat Mr. Halperin, Grandma's lawyer, her confidant for the last 20 years. He stood as I entered, tall and silver-haired, with the kind of presence that calms a room. "Emily, I'm glad you came." I offered a small smile and sat, feeling the chair cushion exhale under me. Moments later, the door opened again. My parents walked in, followed by Nathan, his hair still damp like he'd rushed from the gym. Mom's lips tightened when she saw me. Dad didn't look at me at all. Nathan, on the other hand, offered an awkward shrug and a "hey." I said nothing. I wasn't here to exchange pleasantries. Mr. Halperin waited for everyone to settle before he opened the folder on the polished oak desk. "We are here to read the final testament of Alina Rowan, dated March 8th of this year." His voice was steady, professional, but I felt the blood rush in my ears. She had made changes this year, months before she passed. "She was very clear in her wishes," he added. Mom shifted in her seat. "We just want what's fair." Something in Mr. Halperin's smile suggested he'd heard that line too many times. He began to read. "To my granddaughter Emily, who has always honored my memory while I was still alive, I leave the contents of my estate, my home, my investment accounts, my personal belongings, and my handwritten letters of record." The room fell silent. "To Nathan, I leave the photograph of us on his 5th birthday and my set of chess pieces. May they remind him of the value of patience and strategy. To my daughter Deirdre and son-in-law Lyle, I leave my recipe box. I hope you will finally read the ingredients carefully." There was a pause, a silence thick enough to cut. "I'm sorry, what?" Mom's voice was brittle. Dad blinked. "That's everything. She gave everything to Emily." Mr. Halperin looked up, hands folded. "That is correct." Nathan sat back in his chair. "That can't be right." "She never said anything," Mom whispered, as if that disproved it. I looked at them, this family who had just tried to erase me over tiramisu last week, now scrambling to understand how they weren't the ones holding the pen. "She said it to me," I replied quietly. "More than once." Dad stood up, pacing. "We should contest this. Clearly she wasn't in her right mind. Elinor adored all of us." "She did," Mr. Halperin cut in, polite but firm. "But she also understood each of you very well." Nathan turned to me. "So you just take it all?" I met his eyes. "I didn't take anything, she gave it." He swallowed, clearly unused to losing. Mom pressed a hand to her chest. "She was manipulated. She was old, emotional. Emily always had a way of playing the victim." I felt my body tense, but I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Mr. Halperin flipped to another page. "There's also a letter, addressed to you, Emily. If you'd like to read it privately, you may, or I can read it now." I looked around the room. My parents were frozen in disbelief. Nathan looked vaguely betrayed, like someone had just scratched his name off a VIP list. "Read it," I said. He nodded and unfolded a pale blue paper. "My dearest Emily, if you're hearing this, then I'm gone. But you already know what I think about legacies, not just what we leave, but how we leave it. You have always been my echo in this world. Thoughtful, fierce when it counted, and heartbreakingly kind. I saw how hard you worked to be good, even when no one noticed. I noticed. I'm giving you this because I trust you to honor it, not out of obligation, but integrity. Don't let them guilt you into silence. This is yours. With all my love, Grandma, I didn't cry, not then, but something in me softened like ice cracking in sunlight." Mr. Halperin closed the folder. "That concludes the reading." No one moved. My parents looked like they were grieving something far older than the will, perhaps the myth that control would always belong to them. I stood and reached for the letter. "Thank you," I said to Mr. Halperin, "for respecting her wishes." He nodded. "She was very clear, Emily, and very proud of you." As I left the room, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Justice had already spoken. The cab ride back to my apartment blurred into snow-slick streets and the hush that follows confrontation. I clutched Grandma's letter in my coat pocket, my fingers brushing the creases every few seconds, reassurance that it was real, that I hadn't imagined the way her words sliced through the room like sunlight on cold stone. She had seen me. Not just the tidy version of me that smiled through family dinners and bit her tongue during Nathan's latest blunder. She'd seen the daughter tucked beneath the labels. Responsible, overachiever, too sensitive, and loved me because I kept standing tall when no one asked me to. But inside my apartment, that clarity started to waver. My phone buzzed the moment I stepped through the door. Family group chat. Dad. "As agreed, you'll transfer the funds to Nathan by Friday." "Mom, we're counting on you to do the right thing, Emily." I froze. As agreed. I stared at the screen, rereading the words like they might rearrange themselves into something less insane. They couldn't seriously think I'd just hand it over. No greeting, no apology, no congratulations on being chosen. Just a casual declaration that the very thing they tried to take was now mine to give again. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard, blood pounding in my ears. I never agreed to anything. The estate is not up for discussion. Do not message me about this again. I hit send. Then I silenced the group. For a moment, I stood there in the quiet hum of my apartment, listening to my own breathing. The same apartment I'd furnished slowly, responsibly, one paycheck at a time. The same apartment I paid for while Nathan gallivanted across Europe posting rooftop bar selfies with captions like "hustle hard." The same apartment where Grandma had once visited, bringing cinnamon rolls and stories from her youth like they were folded into her coat pockets. She knew. She always knew. I walked to my desk and opened the small safe drawer where I kept important documents. I placed her letter there, between my birth certificate and a folder labeled "Emergency Fund." Then I sat down, opened my laptop, and searched estate inheritance rights plus Wisconsin plus family interference. Because I knew that text wasn't just a message, it was a threat wrapped in entitlement, a setup for emotional blackmail. It wouldn't be the last. An hour passed, then another. I cleaned the kitchen without realizing it, reorganized the spice rack, took out the recycling, but my mind kept replaying the look on Nathan's face when the will was read. The way Dad's hand curled into a fist on his knee. The way Mom blinked like a woman waking up to a world where she wasn't the queen. And then there was Grandma's voice in that letter. Steady, unapologetic, loving. I sat back on the couch, the group chat muted, the silence pulsing like a warning. This wasn't over, not by a long shot, because people like my parents didn't take no as a final answer. They took it as a negotiation, and people like Nathan, people raised to believe consequences were optional, didn't crumble. They schemed. But this time, I wasn't the Emily they remembered. This time, I had the pen. I didn't respond to the group chat after that. I didn't need to. The silence I left behind did its job better than any reply could have. But what I hadn't expected was how quickly they'd find other ways in. It started subtly. Monday morning, as I walked into the lobby of the marketing firm where I'd worked for the past 6 years, I saw him, Dad, standing by the front desk, pretending to read a brochure about retirement planning. "Emily," he said, as if this was normal. As if we ran into each other on coffee breaks. I slowed, my boots squeaking slightly against the polished floor. "What are you doing here?" He gave a tired smile. "Just wanted to talk, somewhere you can't hang up or storm out." I stared at him, the audacity wasn't even masked. "This isn't the place," I said coolly, glancing toward reception. "And frankly, I don't owe you another conversation." "Sweetheart," he lowered his voice, "you're making things difficult. We all agreed Nathan needs support." I almost laughed. "You agreed without me," he sighed, running a hand through his neatly combed gray hair. "You're emotional, I get it, but think about the optics here. What will people say when they find out you kept everything?" I stepped closer, dropping my voice. "People will say Grandma trusted me, and she did." Without waiting for a response, I walked past him toward the elevators, heart racing harder than I'd admit. At lunch, I found a bouquet of white lilies on my desk with a card. "Remember what family means, Mom." By Wednesday, Nathan had texted me 16 times. Screenshots of overdue bills, a medical invoice, a photo of a final notice from a bank. "Nathan, you really gonna let me go under like this? Nathan, don't forget who used to give you his last fries in middle school. Nathan, I'm drowning here." Every message carried weight, like stones thrown through glass. I didn't answer, but I read every one. Not because I believed him, because I almost did. That's the thing about family manipulation. It doesn't arrive with sirens, it arrives in whispers that sound like love. By Friday night, the inbox was a war zone. "Mom, we raised you better than this." "Dad, she left it to you because she was confused." "Nathan, you don't know the full story, call me." "Mom, if you cared about family, you'd understand." "Nathan, please just pay off the car, it's the last thing I'll ask." I sat in the dark with my phone glowing in my hands. For a second, I nearly tapped reply. Not to cave, but to explain. To remind them of every time I was the one cleaning up after Nathan's disasters, the one helping Mom fill out tax forms, the one who skipped spring break senior year to help Dad prep for his surgery. But then I thought of Grandma's voice in that letter. "Don't let them guilt you into silence. This is yours." So I did something radical. I left the group. Not just muted, not archived. I hit leave chat. Then I blocked their numbers. I stared at my phone afterward, heart thudding like I'd jumped from a high ledge. But when the silence settled, it wasn't fear I felt. It was peace. They wanted me to feel like the villain, but villains don't weep after sending a boundary. They breathe easier. I didn't realize how heavy silence could feel until I filled my apartment with it. No pings, no vibrating guilt in my palm. No desperate apologies that weren't really apologies. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the muffled city breathing through my window panes. By Saturday, it was too much. I needed somewhere that wasn't trying to guilt me or gaslight me into believing I was the villain for inheriting something I didn't steal. So I drove. The cemetery was just outside Milwaukee, tucked behind a willow-lined road and a wrought iron gate that creaked like it had secrets. I hadn't been since the funeral. Too many people. Too many eyes watching me, waiting to see if I would cry. I didn't. I held myself still that day, wearing heels I regretted, standing next to Mom while she dabbed at eyes I'd never seen water for me. But now, alone, I parked beneath the low-hanging gray clouds and stepped out into wind that cut through my coat. The grass was still soft, the ground freshly disturbed, a faint ridge around Grandma's headstone like the earth hadn't fully accepted the loss yet. Eleanor J. Rowan. Beloved mother, devoted grandmother, protector of truth. Someone had added that last part after the burial. I had a feeling it was Mr. Halperin. I knelt down, brushing away a leaf that clung to the edge of the granite. For a moment, I said nothing. Just let the silence wrap around me in something that felt like grief and gratitude woven together. "I got your letter," I whispered. "Thank you." It wasn't much, but the wind stilled for a breath, as if listening. "I don't think you knew what you were starting when you left it all to me," I said. "Or maybe you did. Maybe you knew they'd come for it the second you were gone." The sky above darkened slightly. A few drops of rain tapped against the shoulders of my coat. "They're trying to break me down," I continued. "They show up at my job. They flood my phone. They act like I'm heartless because I won't give Nathan a free pass. But you knew he never earned this." My throat tightened. "You knew I'd be the one to guard what you built. Not because I'm the oldest, not because I'm perfect, but because I don't run from hard things." A tear fell, trailing down my cheek, quick and silent, not because I was breaking, but because I was finally telling the truth. "I want to do right by what you gave me," I said. "Not just the money, the strength, the example, the voice that says, 'No, not this time.'" The wind picked up again, rustling the branches above me. "They keep saying I've changed," I said, "like it's a bad thing." I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the note I'd written that morning, small, folded, handwritten on the same blue stationery Grandma used. I tucked it under the stone, weighed it down with a smooth rock from the edge of the plot. "I promise I will not let them undo what you gave me. I will not bend to guilt disguised as love. I will protect what you entrusted to me." I stood slowly, knees stiff from the cold. The air around me felt different somehow, clearer, like the world had heard. On the way back to the car, my phone buzzed. For a second, I hesitated. I'd unblocked only one number the night before, my father's. A strange decision even to me, but part of me wanted to know if he'd change his tune. But it wasn't a call. It was a new email. Subject, "Please read this, Emily from Nathan Rowan Time, 2:12 p.m. I opened it. I'm sorry for blowing up your phone. I was panicking. I didn't mean to make it all your fault, but I really need help. I messed up. It's not about rent or a bad investment. I got scammed. Something with crypto and a guy I met at a conference. I thought it was legit. It wasn't. I owe more than I can cover and it's getting bad. Like, lawyers and threats bad. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but if there's any way, I'm scared." Nathan, I stared at the message for a long time, not because it surprised me. Because part of me, the part that had spent decades playing family counselor, emotional support, and unpaid bank teller, wanted to help. But I couldn't, because what Grandma left me wasn't just an inheritance. It was a boundary, a lifeline to a future where I didn't bleed for other people's messes anymore. And I wasn't about to cut that rope now. I closed the email without replying. Instead, I opened a fresh message. To David Halperin, subject. Request for legal clarity on asset protection if they were going to keep pushing. I needed someone who could push back harder. There's a strange kind of exhaustion that hits when your fight or flight finally runs out of fuel. I wasn't angry anymore. Not visibly. I wasn't panicked either. I was just hollow. And when you live alone, that silence starts to stretch itself into the walls. The days that followed Grandma's while reading felt like walking through molasses. I went to work. I answered emails. I nodded in meetings. But it was all surface level. Internally, I was bracing, like something bigger was coming and I didn't know which window it would crash through. That Sunday, I took the long way home from the grocery store just to avoid the route near my parents' neighborhood. I hadn't spoken to any of them since Nathan's email, and I didn't plan to. But I could feel the tug, like a frayed thread still tied to my childhood. That night, I sat on my couch in sweats, a blanket over my lap, half watching some true crime documentary while the notifications rolled in like slow drips of poison. "Mom, Nathan's blood pressure has been spiking from the stress. You're breaking this family." "Dad, there's still time to fix this before it gets public. Think of your career." "Nathan, I'm scared, please, I'm not asking for everything, just enough to stop the bleeding." Block, block, block. Again. It was like playing emotional whack-a-mole. On Monday, I stayed late at work. Not because I had to, because it felt safer there. Fluorescent lights and clunky printers and people who only wanted me for my skills, not my loyalty. But Tuesday morning, that's when it got weird. I stepped into the elevator at 8:04 a.m. sharp, balancing a coffee and a croissant, only to find my father already there, leaning against the railing, suit perfect, smile cold. "Emily," he greeted. "Glad I caught you." I didn't respond, just hit my floor number and stared at the doors. "You're not returning calls," he said. "That's not like you." "You're right," I said quietly. "It's not like the version of me you were used to controlling." His smile flickered. This is ridiculous. You're isolating yourself from everyone who cares about you. Everyone who benefits from me, you mean? You've made your point, he snapped, dropping the fake concern. But dragging this out isn't strength, it's cruelty. I turned toward him, still holding my coffee, calm and steady. I didn't drag anything, you all just didn't expect me to say no. The elevator doors opened. I stepped out without looking back. By Wednesday, my inbox had become a minefield. Not from family, no, I'd cut off most of those paths, but from outside. Coworkers forwarding odd emails. Comments from mutual friends. Your brother seems really upset. Your mom was asking about your mental health. I knew what they were doing. When manipulation doesn't work directly, it tries to spread through others. But the worst came Thursday evening. I had just returned from work and barely kicked off my shoes when there was a knock at the door. Through the peephole, my mother. Alone. I stared at her for a long moment, debating whether to pretend I wasn't home. But some part of me needed to see what face she would wear this time. I opened the door slowly. She was in pearls, of course, with her hair in its usual smooth twist and lips set in that practiced expression, half concern, half authority. Emily, she said, can we talk? No, I said, but I'm guessing you're going to try anyway. She stepped in uninvited. Classic. I closed the door behind her, not for politeness, but so the neighbors wouldn't hear what was about to happen. She looked around the apartment like she was cataloging it for evidence. You've done well for yourself, she said. Very controlled. Not offering a tour. She sighed and turned back to me. I came to apologize. I raised an eyebrow. For what? Saying Grandma was confused, telling everyone I'm having a breakdown, or expecting me to fund Nathan's poor choices. A flicker of something, maybe shame, crossed her face, but it vanished quickly. We were surprised, that's all. Your father and I thought. You thought you could still bully me into giving it up, I said. Just say that. Her mouth tightened. This bitterness isn't becoming of you. I stared at her. You still think I'm the problem. I think, she said carefully, you're making things harder than they need to be. Nathan is in real trouble, and yes, we made mistakes, but family doesn't abandon each other. I took a breath. I'm not abandoning anyone, I said. I'm choosing myself for once. She didn't respond, just walked to the door, pausing before opening it. You'll regret this someday, she said softly. No, I replied. You will. She didn't turn around. After she left, I stood in the quiet for a long time, the echo of the door still rattling in my chest. And then I did something small but necessary. I took a sheet of paper and started listing every visit, text, manipulation. A timeline. Not for revenge, not for rage, for proof. Because emotional wars don't leave bruises, but they do leave evidence. There's a fine line between paranoia and intuition. And on Friday, I finally stopped pretending I was paranoid. Because when someone sends you a photo of an overdue hospital bill, claiming medical debt, only for you to reverse image search it and find it posted 6 months ago on a Reddit thread titled Fake Bills for Fake Drama, something inside you snaps. That's what happened. One lazy scroll, one copy-paste search. And there it was. Nathan's proof wasn't even his. I closed the tab slowly, heart pounding. Not with fear, with anger. He hadn't just lied. He'd used vulnerability as a weapon. And I'd nearly fallen for it again. That night, I dug in. I pulled out a worn spiral notebook from the bottom of my drawer, labeled N. Rowan Debt Trail. Yes, I had one. Because being the responsible sibling meant you kept records of every time you paid someone else's parking tickets or fronted the security deposit for their 4th apartment in 3 years. I opened my laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. Credit monitoring sites, public records, tax liens, real estate databases, social media posts he'd forgotten to hide, Instagram tags from so-called friends that painted a very different picture than the one Nathan had sent me. The truth unraveled like thread off a spool. Nathan wasn't in medical debt. He wasn't the victim of some crypto scheme. He was living beyond his means, wildly, unapologetically. He hadn't sold his car to pay bills. He'd traded up, driving a leased Range Rover in a city where he didn't even have a job. He owed nearly $15,000 on a high-interest credit card and had been using a personal cash advance app to float basic living expenses. His Venmo history, public by accident, showed payments for bottle service, resort bookings, and luxury watch purchases. Emergency, he'd called it. I called it manipulation by curation, presenting only the ugliest truths if they served his narrative. By 2 a.m., I had a folder labeled Nathan Actual Financial State. It included screenshots, timelines, flagged transactions, and a note to myself. Check for shell accounts or money movement between Mom and Nathan. Because yes, I had that suspicion now too. That next morning, I sat in my robe with a mug of coffee and called David Halperin. He answered with his usual measured tone. Emily, I was expecting you. You were. I received an email from your brother last night. Something about contesting the will after all. He CC'd your parents. My heart didn't even race. I just sipped my coffee. David, I need to send you a file, I said calmly. It includes recent activity from Nathan and several digital receipts. Can you check the estate terms to confirm if there's a moral clause for revocation or limitations on contesting based on malicious intent? There was a pause, then a small chuckle. You've done your homework. Let's just say I'm learning fast. By noon, I was in David's office, binder in hand. He flipped through it page by page, nodding slowly. This, he said, tapping a photo of Nathan posing shirtless in Dubai with a drink that cost more than my monthly rent, is not a man in crisis. No, I agreed, but it is a man who thinks he's untouchable. David leaned back, steepling his fingers. Legally, they can still attempt to challenge the will, but with this, with his pattern of deceit and financial misconduct, he smiled faintly. It won't go far. I exhaled. Not relief exactly, but something close. Like taking off a coat soaked in rain you didn't realize you were still wearing. Before I left, David added, if they come at you again, Emily, we go on record. Meaning we take them to court before they get the chance to weaponize manipulation as a legal strategy. We establish your defense as a fence. I nodded. For the first time, the fear was gone. Because now I didn't just have strength. I had evidence. That night, I wrote a new letter to Grandma. Not for her grave this time, but for me. I tucked it into my journal. He lied, Grandma, over and over, and still expected love to come with a check. But I'm done buying peace. I'm done paying for other people's silence. This time I fight back with proof. The sun was already low when I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house, the familiar brick facade staring back like an old photo of a life I used to live. I hadn't been here in over a year. Not since Thanksgiving, when Mom asked if I could tone down my work talk because it made Nathan feel less than. That had been the appetizer before the main course of condescension and the dessert of guilt trips. But today I wasn't coming as the daughter who apologized. I was coming as the woman who had finally gathered her proof. I rang the bell once. It took them a minute. The door opened, and there she was, Mom in her usual cashmere and perfume, expression unreadable. Well, she said, this is a surprise. Not really, I replied, holding my bag a little tighter. We both knew I'd show up eventually. She stepped aside. Your father's in the study, Nathan's on his way. Of course he was. The house was quiet, not warm, just quiet in that tense way people hold their breath before a storm. Dad looked up as I entered the study. Emily, I nodded. He gestured toward the armchair. I didn't sit. I'm here to make something very clear, I said. There will be no transfer of assets. There will be no help given to Nathan, not now, not ever. Mom closed the door behind her and walked in slowly. You're angry, we understand. No, I interrupted. You don't understand, and you don't get to play therapist now. Dad sat back, folding his hands. We've been patient. No, you've been persistent, I corrected. There's a difference, and it's exhausting. The front door opened. Nathan's voice echoed from the hallway. You said she was coming. Then he appeared, hoodie slouched, phone in hand, eyes flicking over me like I was a bill he didn't want to pay. Didn't think you had the guts to come here, he said. Didn't think you'd fake medical debt, I replied. That got his attention. I dropped the folder on the coffee table, the one David helped me assemble. Pages slid slightly, revealing a glossy screenshot of him lounging beside a pool in Chelum, time-stamped exactly one day before he'd emailed me about being on the brink. What's this? Dad asked. Reality, I said. Financial records, photos, credit reports, Venmo logs, the Reddit post where Nathan's hospital bill was actually pulled from. Mom blanched. Nathan took a step forward, then stopped. I didn't, he started. You did, I cut in. And I've let you get away with this sort of thing since high school. They stared, silent. I exhaled and continued. You tried to rewrite Grandma's wishes. You pressured me at work. You cornered me with guilt. You even had the audacity to call me selfish while trying to steal from me. Dad stood, voice low. Emily, this is getting out of hand. No, I said calmly. What's out of hand is the entitlement you've all normalized, the way you've turned love into a transaction. You're twisting everything, Mom said sharply. Families help each other. No, I said. Healthy families do this. I gestured around the room. This is something else entirely. Nathan scoffed. So what now? You cut us off forever. I'm drawing a line, I replied. I'm not financing recklessness. I'm not validating lies. I'm not pretending anymore. For a moment, no one moved. Then Dad asked, and what if we take legal action? I smiled. Then I'll countersue for emotional harassment. I'll make public every attempt to manipulate me, and I'll let Grandma's letter speak louder than any of your excuses. Nathan muttered something under his breath. I didn't ask him to repeat it. I walked toward the door. Mom followed. You're really doing this? I already did, I said. The moment you tried to trade my silence for loyalty. As I reached for the handle, she added almost wistfully, she would have hated what you've become. I paused, hand on the knob. No, I said softly, she'd be proud. And with that, I walked out. The door clicked shut behind me. It sounded like freedom. The day after the confrontation, I woke up feeling sore in places I didn't know held tension. My jaw, my lower back. Even my palms, clenched so tightly in that living room I hadn't noticed my nails digging crescents into skin. But for the first time in weeks, my head was clear. I'd said the words I'd rehearsed since childhood. I delivered them not as pleas, but as truths. And now I had one task left, finish what Grandma started. David Halperin called just before 9. His voice was calm but brisk, the tone of a man who smelled litigation coming. They've retained counsel, he said. Your parents, not Nathan directly. That tells me they're funding the challenge, which is interesting. It's not just about the money, I replied. It's about control, he agreed. But they're underestimating your leverage. This isn't going to end how they think. By noon, I was back in David's office, binder in hand, the copy of Grandma's letter tucked inside a protective sleeve. The room felt different now. Less like a legal battlefield, more like a war council. We're going to respond proactively, David said, tapping a fresh folder labeled Rowan Estate Defense. A preemptive filing, countersuit if needed. But first we go on record with the timeline. We laid it all out. The group chat messages, the ambush at the restaurant, the pressure campaign, Nathan's financial deceit, and the confrontation. I gave him everything. The recordings, the screenshots. Even the doorbell camera footage from the night my mother arrived unannounced, still trying to spin guilt into gold. David's paralegal, Sandra, helped catalog each piece. Halfway through, David looked up. You know, he said, most people in your situation would have caved. It's easier to just pay them off and call it done. I know, I replied, but easy's never really been my style. He smiled at that. No, I can see that. We kept working. The hours slipped by, coffee cooling on the table while the truth warmed up into a case. Then came the part I hadn't expected. A knock on David's office door. Sandra peeked in. Someone's here to see you, Emily. I frowned. Who? But she stepped aside, and in walked someone I never thought I'd see again. Aunt Renee. My mother's estranged younger sister, Grandma's only other daughter. She hadn't been at the funeral. Hadn't been at anything, really, since the fallout that left her name practically forbidden in our household. She looked older than I remembered, but also freer. Her hair was streaked with gray, her coat worn but clean. Her eyes landed on me and something softened. Hey, kiddo, she said. I stood slowly, unsure. What are you doing here? She held up a small envelope. I got a letter from your grandmother, arrived yesterday, postmarked the day before she passed. David rose politely. You're Alina Rowan's younger daughter. Unfortunately, she said with a dry smile. But I loved her, even when we didn't speak. She told me what might happen after she died, told me to check in on you if it did. I took the envelope with trembling fingers. My name was on the front in Grandma's handwriting. Inside, a single note. If you're reading this, Em, it means you're standing up for yourself. I knew you would. I hope Renee made it in time. She'll know how to help. Below that, a phone number and the name of a trust. My heart thudded. I work in estate mediation, Renee explained. Small firm, quiet clients, but I know the tricks people use to twist grief into leverage. David looked impressed. You're willing to help, she nodded. For Alina, for Emily, absolutely. I stared at her, unsure how to absorb all of it. You knew this would happen. I knew your parents, she said gently. I knew they'd come for what wasn't theirs. She set her bag down and pulled out her own folder. Let's stop them. And just like that, my team grew by one. But more than that, I had proof I wasn't alone. I had Grandma's plan, David's guidance, and now, the return of the one woman who'd walked away from this family decades ago and lived to tell me why. The courtroom smelled like old paper and something faintly antiseptic, an odd mix of reverence and bureaucracy. I sat at the long oak table, fingers laced tight, while David shuffled papers beside me. Across the aisle sat my parents. Nathan was absent. Working, they claimed, which probably meant avoiding the one room he couldn't charm his way out of. Aunt Renee sat behind me just to the left, calm and composed in a navy blazer that said, "I've done this before and I win." The judge entered. The proceedings began. It was strange, hearing my name spoken in such formal tones. Stranger still was watching my parents, so rehearsed, so outwardly poised, spin the same narrative they'd used since I was old enough to understand favoritism. She wasn't close with a leaner, not like we were, my mother said with controlled sorrow. She's unstable, my father added, voice carefully modulated. Her behavior's erratic, emotional. She stormed out of dinner. She's estranged herself from her family. David stood. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Exhibit B through H, he said smoothly, handing a thick folder to the bailiff. Within minutes, their arguments began to unravel. The text messages, the group chat, the threats, the manipulation, photos of Nathan's luxury lifestyle, records of financial deceit, and Grandma's letter, her handwritten words speaking from the grave, grounding the case in undeniable love and clarity. And then the video. David played it only once. There she was, Grandma, seated in her favorite paisley chair, the afternoon sun warming her silver hair. If you're watching this, then someone's trying to challenge my decision. Let me be clear. I've left my estate to Emily because she is the only one who has never asked for anything but my company. She's the only one who stood by me when the rest of you thought I was too old, too quiet, too inconvenient. She smiled, gently. And to my daughter Deirdre and son-in-law Lyle, I say this. You always loved the spotlight more than the legacy. Let this be a reminder that legacy chooses those who protect it, not those who expect it. Silence filled the room. Even the judge looked moved. When it was my turn, I stood with my heart thundering in my ears. I'm not here to punish anyone, I said, voice shaking but sure. I'm here because this isn't about money. It's about honoring a woman who gave me strength when no one else did. It's about saying you can't twist love into leverage anymore. I won't let you. I sat down. The judge spoke soon after, verdict clear, the will stood. My family's challenge was denied. Outside, the sun hit my face like a warm hand. David walked beside me, loosening his tie, eyes sparkling with something between relief and admiration. You did it. No, I said. We did. Renee met us on the courthouse steps, arms open. She'd be proud, she said simply. A beat passed. Then David turned to me more gently now. So after all this, dinner, drinks, celebration, I laughed, an actual unguarded laugh. Maybe not tonight. I think I need a night in sweatpants and silence. Fair, he said. But soon, I nodded. Soon. Months passed. I kept the house Grandma left me, but turned it into something new. A community center for women dealing with family estrangement, inheritance battles, and silent wars no one prepares you for. It was messy, imperfect, and absolutely healing. One afternoon, I got an email. Subject, job opportunity from David Halperin Body. Your cousin Nathan's finally looking for honest work. I've offered him a job managing documents. Filing, scanning. Thought you'd appreciate the irony. He said yes. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I hated him, because I didn't, not anymore. I'd stopped carrying that weight. Let him file papers. Let them stew in the silence I left behind. I was no longer the daughter trying to earn space at the table. I owned the whole damn room now. And the silence, it didn't ache anymore. It healed. If you were Emily, could you have walked away like that? Let me know below. And if this story moved you, like and share. It helps others find it. Thanks for listening. Until the next story.